Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Comfort Food, the podcast all about arts and media that people love and the people that love them. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's the biggest Metroid fan I know and a fellow DualShockers alum who's currently writing for the Outer Haven. It's Cam Olmedo. Welcome, Cam.
Hey, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here and talk about some cool games, or a very specific cool game that I don't shut up about sometimes.
Yeah, Metroid Fusion. So Cam, tell me a little bit about your kind of history and exposure and kind of build up to the game.
So I grew up Nintendo kid, big time Nintendo kid.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't start playing Metroid games, proper Metroid games, until after, because the first time I came across Metroid or Samus was in Super Smash Bros. On the 64.
Yep.
That was the first
Just
time.
like everyone.
Right, most people, yeah. Because sort of like Metroid was sort of like, yeah, I mean, you could even say now that it's sort of like not exactly Nintendo's like top priority.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with
that. Yeah, so I played Samus even to this day is my main in Smash Brothers.
Oh, same.
Yeah, like ever since 64, like she was awesome. And when I played her, at first, did not know she was a girl. I was like, cool, oh, this character looks cool, has a big like gun on their arm, I'm down. Right. And then from there I started exploring like Super Metroid, and then even going back to the original Metroid on the NES, and just played all of the ones that came out, like Zero Mission later on GBA, and then eventually led up to Fusion. Or did Zero Mission come out before or after Fusion? I can't recall.
I think Zero Mission came out after Fusion.
Did it? Okay.
Because like I might have my timeline crossed up, because I feel like the Game Boy Advance is like a gap in my like thing, because I went from Game Boy Color to DS. But
right. Okay. Sure.
I
may have gotten this. I think you're right. I'm pretty sure you're correct that Fusion came out first. But yeah, I definitely like went back. After I discovered her in Smash Brothers and played all of them and loved them, and then fell in love with that world. That world is like so cool and really dark sci-fi for something coming from Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And it's like I do still wish to this day I would explore it more, but that's a whole other can of worms. but yeah, and then got to Fusion, loved it. I remember playing it. I was 12 years old when that came out in 2002. I remember I was 12 years old. Mm-hmm. Got in on GBA and loved it. And yeah, that's pretty much like where my obsession with it came from. And I finished it a few times within the last few years as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I personally, like, my history with the franchise is super weird, because I'm pretty young to be such a big Metroid fan.
Sure.
I'm only 20, so I never really cared about Metroid until like I remember like being on the Wii, like on Nintendo's like channel on the Wii, where they'd like do all this promo stuff, and they were talking about Other M, and I was like so excited, and I was like, wow, this looks really cool, what is this? And then I never played it. And then
Other M is a weird one for sure.
And then I got an eShop card years later.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, Samus Metroid is one of the characters in Smash, because I was like super into Smash 4 on the Wii U. And so I got Mega Man 1, F-Zero, Super Metroid, and the first Kirby game, because I never played any of those games or anything.
Those are all good places to jump in for sure.
And yeah, I really like Super Metroid. It's been my second favorite game for long before I beat it and long after, but that really drove me to want to discover more about the series and that kind of the universe, especially reading more about like the story and things that I didn't fully understand.
There's so much there. Like
there really is.
Yeah, like in the games, it's pretty like kind of subtle, but then if you dive into that lore, there's so much stuff. Like I absolutely love the Chozo. They're so weird. Like they're big weird space chickens who give people armor. Like it's awesome. I was like, this is sick.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the coolest things about both Game Boy Advance Metroid games, but especially Fusion.
Fusion goes really deep
that it just embraces that weird kind of sci-fi nature of it.
Yeah, and it has a bit more narrative than some of the previous ones, which is a topic of contention with a lot of other, I guess, quote unquote purists, I guess.
How
Which
do you
I
feel
didn't.
about it?
I don't mind it. I don't mind. I mean, I was young when I played it as well. So like I said, I was 12 years old. So, and even at that point, I had played pretty much just about all the other ones before then, and I didn't mind it. I was like, oh, this is cool. They're fleshing out the world a little more, giving this, generally silent character a little bit more personality. And then, but the other extreme of that is when you get to like other M ones, like take it a little too far,
Right.
and and then God, what was her superior's name? I forget his name
Adam?
now. Adam, yeah, and their whole relationship was weird in other M, but
Yeah.
and he was like around in Fusion, like he would speak every now and then you would get Samus's like sort of internal monologues when she's going like up and down the elevators and stuff, and like. And I liked it. I liked that they added a little more story, like a little more just world building, and you sort of got to learn a little bit more what's going on in her head, because up to that point, she's literally been this silent character who, for all intents and purposes, sort of like you can insert yourself pretty easily,
Right.
which isn't a bad thing. But I like that they fleshed it out, gave her a bit more. I wouldn't say they didn't go as far as give her like a huge personality, but they gave her like a few little more motivations. You sort of understood where she was going, like why she was doing it, and then aside from the characterization in Fusion, they also went a little bit more linear with it. Not necessarily like you have to go this way, but it sort of like directs you way more than some of the others. So if you look at the map, it's like, oh, this is your goal.
Right.
Which again, some people hate, but I don't mind it. Like I think there's a place for it. Like I don't think it was too much. I didn't think it was overt, where it was like it ruined the experience for me. I'd still spent a whole lot of time exploring. Last time I played it, I actually recently played Fusion, maybe within the last 2 years, and I 100%ed it. Wow. And I went back and like found like all like the hidden rockets and missiles in the walls and stuff, like everything. I found everything, and and I don't think the linear nature of it necessarily ruins it, but I do understand the people that hate that and the sort of more like heavier emphasis on narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and I think the people who are like kind of hesitant or like don't necessarily enjoy the narrative aspect of Metroid Fusion, I think part of it is that like, because I personally think the narrative stuff in Metroid Fusion is really cool, but I think to me at least from what it seems like it's not even that people don't like the narrative aspect. I think it's that they don't like it, that not I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this right.
Sure.
It seems like they don't like it as much, not necessarily because it is more linear, but because the story to them is an excuse to make the game linear. And I think that's where a lot of the kind of
I can see
contention about the story comes from.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely, it's not like an invalid argument to make, but
right.
But again, I guess for me personally, like I didn't mind it. I didn't think it was. It doesn't feel as linear as like some people make it out to be.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Especially still. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, basically, like I was just gonna say, especially because there are these sections where it says go here, but then X cinematic thing happens, and it's like, oh, we got to find the long way around, or oh, we have to find a specific thing, or oh, the SAX is coming in here.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it definitely sort of pushes you in certain directions, but it does sort of leave room for you to sort of do your Metroid. Yeah. You do your Metroiding and you do your backtracking and your exploration, and I love that. And then you mentioned like X and the SAX and all that. I remember that one specific cutscene where like they zoom in on its face. And it scared the hell out of me when I was 12 years old.
Oh, I bet.
I was like, yeah, this is crazy. I was not expecting that to like just take up the whole screen on the little GBA. But yeah, I love it now. It scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
And I mean, going back And like, you know, you mentioned one of the first things that you said about the franchise is that Metroid is a series that is so unexpectedly dark, so unexpectedly different from a lot of other Nintendo stuff. And I think absolutely. Metroid Fusion is like the extreme of that. I think there's a lot more a lot more graphic stuff, a lot more scary stuff, and it really, really serves to the quality of the game, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
obviously,
I think
like
so.
it's not like the scariest thing ever. It's not
Eternal Darkness or something, you know? Like,
right,
it's
right.
Not, yeah, like it has just enough like creepiness. It definitely has like, I mean, obviously like one of the inspirations was Ridley Scott's Alien, and that's very apparent like from the beginning, right. even all the way to, you know, Fusion and beyond, honestly. And it sort of has that like claustrophobic sort of feeling. Yeah. Like, because like, you're, for the most part, you're in enclosed spaces in these ships, in these facilities that are just completely dilapidated and just overrun with these terrifying creatures. And it's just like so different from like obviously something like a Mario or like a Zelda. Right. Even Zelda, like Legend of Zelda, can even have some dark moments in there. Like that's sort of like, you know, that sort of has like the high fantasy sort of like creepiness, and then you have the sci-fi creepiness here, which I love, and like I wish they would like keep exploring that because it's so different from everything else that Nintendo does. Like even even now, like it's one of my favorite franchises, honestly, in all of gaming. And
yeah, same here.
Waiting for Metroid Prime 4 to come is waiting.
Yeah. And so speaking of kind of more Metroid, so obviously, you know, again, this is in my opinion. I think Metroid, the core 2D Metroid games to me tell a really tight, really cool story. Where do you see the story of the core Metroid games? What do you see and what do you hope to see happening in a Metroid 5?
I would definitely like to see, because I believe, so Fusion was really chronologically the last one. Yeah. If, like, in the timeline, I know the timeline's sort of all over the place. It gets, like, really murky when you're including Prime and the Prime trilogy.
Right. And then, like, Prime Hunters and all that stuff. It's so confusing.
And I know even, like, Pinball has some sort of, like, weird lore things in there that fits in somehow. Like, I played, like, a tiny bit of Pinball, but I never got too deep into it. But I would love to see like just a continuation of, you know, seeing more of Samus's. Honestly, I'll probably do it in person that wants this, but wants to see more characterization from Samus. I would love to see like it doesn't necessarily have to be like this, you know, just character study in the vein of like, you know, the last God of War game, but you know, just I liked seeing a little bit more of that in Fusion. Now, it doesn't necessarily just have to go too crazy with it, but I would like to see more of that. Seeing her just have, like, a bit more agency.
Absolutely,
yeah. For sure. Which is a problem that a lot of people had with Other M. You already know. Yeah. You I can tell you knew where I was going with that. But,
right.
Yeah, that was a huge problem in Other M. But, go ahead.
Sorry. I think that also a big thing with kind of giving Samus agency and the importance of her character and the importance of the history of Metroid is that, you know, the original Metroid is a 2D game. It looks like, when you first start it looks like Mario. You go left, you can go right, you can jump up and down, you can shoot things. And that option of going left as well, and having something that isn't just constantly auto-scrolling for you, was a really big deal. And I think that freedom. Obviously, that's such a basic boilerplate example, but you look at every aspect of the franchise, at least some of them like super influential ones. Obviously, I don't see Fusion as very influential, but I do see it as really high quality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that agency and that freedom is something that some players, again, like from the narrative standpoint, making it more linear, I think is something that could still be established while having a linear narrative. And I think that that's actually, you know, this is kind of going a little bit off topic, but that's something that they really explored, in my opinion, really well in the Metroid 2 remake from 2017.
Yes, I was wanting to get to that one as well. That's probably like the last game that I actually played a lot on the 3DS. 100% of that one as well. Absolutely loved it. I went hard on that game when it came out, and it was just like, it was everything that I wanted from Metroid, just like dialed up, like just to like just the perfection. Honestly, I think that is a perfect Metroid game. Samus Returns, yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely agree. I was I was so disappointed when I saw some of the reviews for that game come up, and even now going back and rereading some of the reviews for that, it's just like, oh, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I thought the game was phenomenal. Like like I said, I 100%ed it. I'm not even sure how many hours I put into it, but I got everything. I saw everything. There's like a handful of Metroids that are just kind of hidden, and you have to find them.
I'm sorry, you cut out for what you just said. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, there's a handful of like Metroids hidden like in that game that aren't necessarily on like for lack of a better word, the beaten path. They're sort of like, you have to go off and find them, and that's part of how you get your 100% completion. But like, so not all of the Metroids you're gonna come across in like just in your journey to sort of like finish the game. Like you have to sort of go off and find the rest of them, and I loved that, and I loved like how much lore they also fit into there as well.
Right.
And like I said before, like all of these games have like some sort of like just weird lore just going through, and like and like the Chozo like come into play a whole lot in Samus Returns, and you learn a little bit more about them, and like it was sort of like everything that I wanted from all of the games kind of pushed into like one. And like it took everything that I loved from every Metroid game and just put it into this game that like I absolutely adored. I would love to see them bring that to the Switch as well, because I'd be down for that. I'd be 100% down for that.
I would. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if Super Metroid needs to be remade, but I would love to see that that remake, Samus Returns, and Metroid Fusion get that treatment, and then have that come to Switch as like some kind of collection or something.
And it'll only be
that would be that's like one of my dream announcements.
Only available for 2 months, though.
Sorry?
It'll only be available for 2 months, like it did.
Oh my god!
Don't get me started on that.
I can't. I cannot believe that. That's so dumb. It doesn't make any sense. But I mean, honestly, Nintendo's been so weird recently. It's kind of par for the course at this point.
Nintendo makes very strange decisions, such as not putting more money into Metroid.
Exactly. So
like, that's a franchise that everyone seems to like.
So what is to you, like a hallmark moment of Metroid Fusion?
I think I would say, well, like the one moment I was telling you about when they zoom in on X's face, like that's one of the moments that I just is seared into my brain. I don't know if it's trauma because I was terrified as a kid, but that's one that I always think of. And so some people, we haven't actually touched on it yet, but a lot of people don't like the suit. I like it because it's weird. Yeah. I like how weird it is. Absolutely. And like the colors are weird. I was like, in my mind, they were just going like, let's just go as weird and sci-fi as possible. It reminded me of like something out of like Sentai, like some sort of like Sentai like show, like Super Sentai or something like that. That's sort of like where my mind went. So I thought connected it to like Power Rangers or Kamen Rider or something like that. And that's sort of like where my mind went, because like some of those costumes get bizarre. Right. If you're looking at like Kamen Rider stuff.
And I also think that like the reasoning for it and kind of the aesthetic of the suit also just works better with the game, honestly, because I think having you know, Samus in her traditional armor in the Varia suit after beating Super Metroid, walking around and just like basically looking like a tank walking through all these like kind of weird, slimy, slender, grotesque mutations of these animals and creatures and monsters that she's already fought.
Yeah, I think thematically it fits very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even, you know, as you progress and like obviously like through the normal Metroid progression, you get different armor pieces and your armor changes. So towards the end of that game, you sort of do end up with like the color scheme, like that orange and sort of yellow color scheme, but like with the Fusion suit, you know?
Yeah.
so it sort of like does go back to that, and it does, all of that does fit into the narrative, which again, a lot of people don't like. But so a lot of people won't even care to hear that that reasoning, because the story is not necessarily why they're there.
Right.
But again, that's fine. If that is how someone feels, that's totally cool. I don't mind it. People are allowed to feel what they feel. But I like it. I liked it as a kid. I still like it now. Like I said, I played it maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. Still love it. I still love it. Even right before that, I replayed Super Metroid. Loved it. If not more than I did before. But
right.
But yeah, there's so much going on in Metroid in general, but so much like in Fusion that I can just go on and on about.
And I think that's also like one of the cooler things about Fusion is like where the other Metroid games, I would say aside from Samus Returns, I think Samus Returns kind of blends Fusion and Super Metroid a little bit.
Oh yeah.
In Super Metroid especially, which was the last 2D Metroid game before that, and also the first one with the graphical fidelity, I would say, to be able to really tell a story just through environmental cues and environmental storytelling.
Right. And they even had like their little like mini cutscenes, like even just the way like Samus looked, like when they would do like the up close views of her in the elevators. That
it was
looked
unsettling.
Great. Yeah, and it looked great like visually, and it was also just like very unsettling, like you said, like, and it even has like this kind of going back to the story. It does have a very like body horror kind of feel to it. Basically, she's been infected by this X parasite.
And they had to like mutate her basically.
Yeah, so she basically had to completely fuse with the parasite, otherwise she was going to die. And it does have this, really cool, and I love like body horror stuff. Like I just love how weird and messed up it can be. And like I feel like Fusion has that more so than like all the ones that came before. And one of the many reasons I love about it.
Absolutely. I think in general Metroid Fusion doesn't just take horror to the next level, but I think it also takes the tension to the next level. And that was one of the things I noticed a lot when I was preparing for this episode. I've been like kind of reviewing a lot of criticism about the game, both positive and negative. And something that kept coming up was how the game builds tension like no other Metroid game does.
Yeah, exactly. You're being stalked like the whole game for the most part, like pretty much.
Right.
And then which kind of goes back to like that idea that it's very inspired by Alien. You're in this facility, running away from this force that you can't just beat outright. Like you have to, ultimately you have to build up. And I remember when I first came across, the X and the SAX, and after being chased, at first I wouldn't run. I was like, let me see what would happen if I attack. And terrible idea.
Right. I think that's one of my favorite moments in that game is just every encounter that you have with SAX, and it feels it's kind of like in Mega Man X when you encounter Vile.
Yes.
And you're just not powerful enough to do it, and something else happens to save you, or you're lucky enough to slip into an event, or something like that happens, or you can escape because you're able to grab onto ledges now, and SAX can't. And I think that's like those moments of tension where it's like, oh god, if I fuck this up, I am so screwed. I cannot afford to mess this up. I have like 1 health left. I don't have any ice missiles. Like I need to survive this.
Yeah, I remember like once you have that oh shit moment of like, I can't hurt this guy. I need to get the fuck out of here. And then it just becomes like a mad dash, and just like there's always that tension. And sometimes you don't run, you have to like literally hide in a spot until like he does sort of his like his cycle, his patrol, and then it sort of like dives into like a little bit of like almost like a stealth game at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the tension, like as you said, like it's like it's not like any of the other Metroid games. Like they really build it up and really make you like tense. Like I remember being physically tense. Even when I played it recently, I was just like, oh god, this is a lot. This is suspenseful, and like I love it. It's so good, so well done.
Yeah, or like I think one of my other favorite moments, a more kind of I guess subtle build up in tension, is how long it takes for you to go from seeing the remains of Ridley kind of just crumble in like the ice area to fighting the ex-Parasite version of Ridley. That the like kind of trajectory from seeing that happen to fighting Ridley is so cool. Like it's such a subtle creeping buildup where it's like, okay, something's going on with Ridley. I know this series. There's no way they're gonna just ignore that and let it happen. Right.
Yeah, like Ridley's sort of like he was such a mainstay in this franchise. Like she's Samus's Bowser, basically. Right. Like just always around causing trouble out of nowhere, and to see Ridley there and in that brief moment you're like something's not right, something just doesn't add up, and then it obviously culminates in like that confrontation. Yeah. And yeah, it's so well done, and like just the pacing of it is like so well done.
Yeah, and I think
when I come across it, and then it's not that long after that that confrontation happens.
I think that word pacing is like one of the things that Metroid Fusion nails better than any other Metroid game, personally. And like we've talked on and on about how it's a much more linear game. It's got this and this that's different about it, but I think pacing is one of the most notable things that's different about it, because like we've been talking about with the encounters with the X, with the encounters with other bosses, with Ridley, with the X-Parasite itself, there's no way that a game that's paced like Metroid Prime or Super Metroid, where you're basically just told to go explore and find your way out of this place, would be able to kind of have those moments and feel the right way like they do in Fusion.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like, and again, I think Super Metroid's phenomenal, and the Prime trilogy is phenomenal, and the way because those games literally just throw you in,
right?
And I love them for that. Mm-hmm. And they just throw you in. They're just like, look around, find some shit, and just figure it out. Look around. There's some secrets around. Just find them. Figure it out. And then when you have Fusion, which is like, it does throw you in, but then it's like sort of inching you towards this way, and I think that has a lot to do with it having such a tight narrative. Sort of facilitates that need to sort of be pushed in certain directions a little more so than you would in Super or Prime. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it works so well. Like, I feel like if they just threw you into Fusion as it was, but it didn't have any sort of narrative, it would just sort of feel a bit more rushed. Whereas the narrative sort of like adds to the pacing, and sort of it has their slower moments, and then there are moments where it needs to sort of ramp up and just go off the wall, and like whether it's a big action set piece or a suspenseful sort of like stealth sequence where you have to sort of hide or run for your life. And like that pacing coupled with the story just works so well. It sets Fusion apart from the other ones like so significantly, which I think is just like something that just makes it so good and such a different Metroid experience.
Yeah, and I've played I've kind of been like not fully marathoning, but I've been playing through a lot of the Metroid franchise for the first time ever this year. Obviously, I've beaten Super and I've beaten Samus Returns, and before I had played most of the beginning of I'd played like the first like 3 or 4 hours of Prime, but up until this year I never rolled credits on Fusion, Prime, or Zero Mission, and Fusion to me is by far the most unique Metroid game, and I think for its flaws, for its positives, I think it has the highest highs and the lowest lows, and I think it's because of that pacing.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Like the pacing is just, it's so different from like everything else, and it definitely sets it apart. Like, not to say that like the Metroid like quote unquote like formula is bad, because that formula is phenomenal. Like it's Agreed, been replicated so many times. Like there's so many like other great games that have come for that. Even like in recent years, you'd get like your Guacameles or your Hollow Knights and stuff like that, and you know, that's sort of like in the, you know, other Metroidvanias of like that type, and they're so influential. And then to have like Fusion come in and sort of like take that formula and sort of like make it its own and do its own thing with it, while still like I feel retaining like the spirit of it.
Yeah. Like
just it makes it like such a unique experience, and then just even aside from that, just visually, it's so much different. Like, and like just from the suit, like just the enemy types are just different. Like, especially the suit. Like it's a weird looking suit, but I like it. I like it because it's so weird, and it's not just another like big bulky orange like metal suit. And again, which I also absolutely love.
Yeah, I also
the Fusion suit is so cool.
I also think that just like, you know, you mentioned the visuals are so different, and I think both Game Boy Advance Metroid games are like absolutely gorgeous, but I think Fusion sprite work might be the best sprite work I've ever seen. like hands down. I think
like
the way
if you
that
look
Fusion
closely
kind of
at Samus and her Fusion suit, like it's constantly sort of like morphing and sort of like pulsating on her body, and it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Right.
And sort of like goes into like that weird alien sort of like body horror, and it's just like I remember just like looking closely at it when I played it recently, and just sort of like admiring just her idle animations, where it's just like it's not like she's doing anything extravagant or anything crazy. It's just like the suit itself just sort of like it feels like it's very much alive, which is like what they were going for. Like it feels like there's this entity like on her body, like just and it's like it's just looking at it up close, it's just like it's so different, like, and it doesn't look like it's mechanical. It's like it's this biological organism, this biomechanical like just suit that she has, and it's so different, and that's like again one of the many things that I love about this game.
So let's say you're talking to someone who's never played a single Metroid game before. Firstly, shame on them. Secondly, how do you describe how because obviously, you know, you're talking about how much you love this formula of Metroid. Fusion's different. How and when do you recommend that they play Fusion? Do you recommend that they skip the original, just play Zero Mission, and then do Samus Returns, Super, and then Fusion? Or do you recommend that just, like, Fusion is something that happens separately? Like, just because of how different it is gameplay-wise?
You know, I definitely would include it in sort of like that, in that list of, like, essential Metroid games to play.
Absolutely.
But I feel like I definitely would have it just, like, on the end of that. But at the same time, I don't think that unless this is saying they don't really care about like the overall universe, don't care about the lore. I feel like because it's so like I guess a bit more accessible, it wouldn't hurt to like dive into that one
right
off the bat. Now, is that how like my like ideal way of playing it? Probably not. But I feel like if someone is new to the franchise, like jumping into Fusion, like just kind of just like blind, and I feel like they would definitely enjoy it. And you know, because it's like a little bit more condensed, a little bit more linear, a little bit more story driven, it could definitely like very well like ease them into like the I guess more, you know, advanced, more like deeper ones, like something like even like Samus Returns, which, you know, I think is like sort of like the pinnacle for me right now. And then in Super is like right up there with Samus Returns, honestly. But I would like but if we're going down the list, I would say like Zero Mission, Samus Returns, Super, and then Fusion, like and just to really throw them for a loop, just throw in Federation Force, just to really fuck with them, just to be like, hey, just to like keep them humble, like just bring them down a little.
Fusion Force. I wish that game, like, honestly, if they brought that game to Switch, I would buy it and play it.
You know what? I would play it. I'd play Federation Force again.
Because I bought it day one. It's the first Metroid game I ever bought day one, sadly.
Oh, man.
I
I'm
played
so
like
sorry.
one level of it, and I was like, this is really hard to play on a new 3DS. I just couldn't do it.
It was it's such a weird choice, such a strange choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad they sort of course corrected with Samus Returns.
Absolutely. All right, well,
Yeah.
Cam, now we are at the part of the show where we kind of, obviously a big part of this show is talking about memories with whatever media we're talking about. And so I kind of went on Twitter, Instagram, a bunch of other social outlets and said, hey, what do you think of Metroid Fusion? Do you have any special memories or takes associated with it? And we have a lot, I think probably significantly more replies than I've ever gotten for an episode of this show. So that's really awesome. But this first one, let's see. I want to find the first one. The first one comes from friend of the show, Josh Biddick. He says, I found this game scratched up on the back of the bus. No one claimed it, so I took it home and fell in love.
That's also how Nintendo treats it. The entire franchise of Metroid just leaves it on the back of a bus.
Oh my god. That would, honestly, you know what? That's a better marketing scheme than most of what Nintendo's done for Metroid in the past 15 years.
Metroid, it's on the back of your bus. Go play it.
Oh my god. If I found Metroid on the back of my bus, I would be so happy.
I was found an iPod Touch on a bus.
What?
Back in high school.
Oh my god. That's
and it was
crazy.
like, I was like, holy shit, this is like finding like the Ark of the Covenant. Like this is incredible.
This next memory comes from Alexander Kozibear Kozima. That's at Alex Kozina. And he says, an excellent Metroid game. While its linearity during its first half can be disappointing to those wanting a more traditional Metroid experience, the way in which it breaks out of this linearity in the second half and allows you to gradually interconnect the different sections of the space station via secret passageways is awesome. A vocal subset of people tend to rank this one lower than Metroid Zero Mission, but I would say that they're more or less equal in terms of quality.
That is a great assessment. I think that's great. Like, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, you know, sort of pointed out like the linearity of it. Like, obviously, some people don't like that, but I feel like there is more to that. Like, it isn't just it's like go from point A to point B. Like, it does definitely open up, and yes, the first few hours are a little more linear, but they're sort of like weaning you into it, but once it opens up, it really opens up, and
yeah,
you know, it really rewards you for sticking with it.
And honestly, you know, this is a bit of a spicy take, but personally, I prefer Fusion, but
over Zero Mission.
Yeah, I think so.
So do I.
Sorry.
So do I. I do as well.
Yeah, I obviously no hate to Zero Mission.
Zero Mission's great. Zero Mission's fantastic.
There's just something about Fusion that I really like. I think it's because I played them in order. I played Fusion before I played Zero Mission, in order of release, not canonically. Right. But having played them in order of release, I found, just because, like, you know, we have the luxury of looking back and seeing that the movement introduced in Fusion and how it handles for the Game Boy Advance is also applied for Zero Mission.
Oh yeah, for sure. They definitely learned a lot of lessons in Fusion that they carried over to Zero Mission, and Zero Mission is fantastic as a result. Like, Zero Mission is a great game.
Yeah,
it is a great sort of like retelling of that original story, and like even like expanding on that a little.
Yeah, to me it's almost like obviously I don't know if I'd say it's on the same. Well, it's like Mario 3 and Mario World, to me. I obviously they're both very much beloved games. I think personally I like Mario 3 much more, because even though, you know, that's apparently a hot take, but 3, you know, lays a lot of groundwork for World in the same way that Fusion does for Zero Mission. But I also think 3 is a better game than World. But
yeah, I have to actually think, because I adore both of those games, because I've actually, Super Mario World was one of the first games that I played as a kid, so it does have that like nostalgic sort of sentimental value to it. Right. And then I also, you know, not long after, I also played 3, because and I played so much of both of those games. But 3 is phenomenal. I absolutely love 3, but I think my just sort of like heart is with World, and my heart's always been with World, but Super Mario 3 is a fantastic game, and definitely one of the best Mario games, even to this date.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And my phone screen locked. Okay. This next memory comes from Suburbanite Slob, and they say, "This game always brings me back to being 13 when all I did was sit in my room, play video games, and cycle CDs through my 5 CD changer. I played it on the Game Boy Player for GameCube. The soundtrack to this game may as well be Metallica, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and AC/DC."
Yeah, this one spoke to me. This one speaks to me. Yeah, looks like we're around the same age, so yeah, like I definitely was listening to a lot of Linkin Park at this time, and yeah, just really going for it, and yeah, there's a lot of good memories with like that kind of music and this game playing on like, because we didn't have Spotify, we had to like, had to wear my Walkman or something and like, or like have like my CDs going in my my CD player and just go and like, have that going in the background while I play some sweet Metroid Fusion. It's so I definitely relate to that one for sure.
I will say though, if you haven't played it with the sound on, you should play it with the sound on, because the sound design in that game is also very fantastic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's so good. It's very good.
Oh god. This next one comes from Dennis B. Price, and he says, "I love Metroid Fusion, one of my top 3 Metroid games. I remember while playing it as a kid, there was a creep factor of a horror movie vibe to it. Whenever the parasite or symbiote, it's been a while since I played it, controlling Samus's old suit showed up on screen.
Yeah.
That's one game I would love a Switch remaster or remake in the way of the Samus Returns on 3DS from a while back. I could get lost in that game again if they did it. But I don't expect that kind of an announcement from Nintendo. Love Metroid."
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely, like, I feel like we've sort of echoed a lot of that already with, like, the horror talk, and, yeah, just, it definitely has, like, that very big horror feel, which I feel isn't necessarily absent from the previous games, because that's definitely there, but it feels way more overt in Fusion, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're being stalked.
And you're weak.
I keep going back to Alien, and you're weak, and you're definitely not at your peak. The typical Metroid thing happens is like a thing happens in the beginning of the game, and you lose all your powers from the previous game, and it's again that's part of like the formula.
Yeah, to me,
some
honestly,
people hate that honestly, but I think it's fine.
it kind of reminds me of I forget what video this is from, but Video Game Donkey on one of his videos, I think it's talking about, I think Doom 2016, he talks about how Doom compared to other first-person shooters, you can just kind of do whatever the fuck you want in Doom, as long as you're thinking. Whereas in other first-person shooters, there's a lot of ducking behind cover, you gotta watch out for more powerful guns, you gotta watch out for people in more powerful vantage points. And I feel like Super Metroid to Fusion has a similar tension of Doom to Call of Duty, for example.
Okay, yeah,
where
yeah.
You're always like you're so much more vulnerable. You're not this unstoppable killing force who's on this mission to avenge or get revenge or to rescue something.
Yeah, you're sort of like for like the majority of Fusion, you're sort of like backed into a corner. So you're not like completely powered up. You don't have all of obviously Samus's skills. Obviously you get them as you progress a bit more. But for most of that game, you're running. You're running for more of that game than you are actually fighting and defeating enemies. Which, that being said, there are lots of enemies in the game to like beat, like little mini bosses and stuff like that. But like the vast majority of that game is just you being on the run from this from this unstoppable force that can literally just decimate you in 2 hits.
And it's not just the game design that's telling you that either. Everything about that game is telling you that you're on the run. Even the way that some of the creatures act, they're kind of they're aggressive towards Samus, but when the parasite shows up, when Samus's suit shows up, they act in fear.
Oh yeah. I remember there's a few times. I mean, I think one of the first times you come across the parasite, and your suit is, I believe there's some like background elements, like little creatures that literally just scurry off, as like, because, and this is before you even see it, so it's sort of like hinting at like something's coming, like you should like, you know, something's coming, you should be like on your shit because you're gonna probably need to either fight something or run.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great. Like, it definitely has like so much more like horror. Like, we keep going back to that, but like it's so much more horror than what we're used to in the series, and I feel like that's why it's like stuck with me for so long. So it's so different, and like given how close I am to like the Metroid franchise,
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it stand out like above like all the other ones as far as just that tension, because Fusion does it so well.
And then I think this is the last one. This memory comes from Mikey Phillips at Keylock MVP on Twitter, and sorry, and he says, other than being a handheld game that actually put fear in me as a teen, because I always felt like I was being hunted down by a thing that I could not fight. Wait, what? I think they didn't complete the sentence, but anyways,
I mean, at that point already, like, it's, I mean,
yeah,
I feel that, like, just again, I feel like we always go back to, like, you know, being hunted and the horror feeling.
Right,
and,
right.
You know, this person definitely sort of echoed that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, honestly, the amount of times that we've mentioned the horror, the vibes, just the resonant fear in everything
Mm-hmm.
of the SAX, I think just speaks to something that we both talked about earlier, that this game is so consistent in its quality, or in its ability to tell the story, in its ability to establish an atmosphere, like most other Metroid games are. And that if that consistency were across the board, it would be the best Metroid game, bar none.
Oh yeah, I agree. Like, I think if, you know, I wouldn't mind if they like even revisited this sort of like, not necessarily like a remake, but like a new Metroid game, mm-hmm. where you sort of like take, you know, like the core of like, you know, what made the Metroid games great, like, you know, just, you know, like things from Super and even Samus Returns and Zero Mission, and then put a little bit more horror in that, and a little bit more tension and suspense, and you can have something that will just like probably be one of the best Metroid games. Mm-hmm. And because like just the way this one makes you feel, like it really does fill you with this dread that you do not expect to feel from a GBA game. You know, like it's mm-hmm. and it's a testament to just like the game design and the game designers, what they built with, like, you know, the technology that they had, which, you know, looking back on it, it just seems so just like, you know, old school. Mm-hmm. But like they managed to do so much, and
they really did.
Convey so much emotion and fear with it, and it's so impressive, like what they did, even to this day, honestly. And that game mm-hmm. holds up really well still.
Yeah, honestly, like I think because of the design philosophies of a lot of games from that era, and a lot of the ways that kind of handheld games used to be designed, I think it holds up better than Zero Mission, just because, at least as a handheld game, because of the fact that it's kind of designed to be played in short bursts.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, yeah, it's just the way they designed it. It's just like you can play it in short bursts and still just have like a great time. Like, I remember being a kid having to play it in short bursts because I was scared, and I was like, I am scared. I want to not play this for maybe, you know, 2 hours. I'm gonna turn on my GameCube and play, you know, something else for a little bit. Yeah. And then I'll always come back, and like weirdly enough, I'll probably go to my GameCube and play Prime instead. But because I know like those games actually came out, I believe, on the same exact day, or around the same exact time, right? And which is an interesting choice, but you know, sort of cannibalizing themselves a little, because obviously Prime was like the crown jewel at that moment, mm-hmm. and which I feel like it definitely did take a bit of the shine away from Fusion. Mm-hmm. Is, say, if like Fusion came out like a few months before, or even a few months after, it could have definitely had more time to like breathe and be its own. But Prime is phenomenal. Like, I mean, And that trilogy's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I actually played Fusion a little while before I played Prime, and I feel like as much as I love Prime, I think I do actually enjoy Fusion more. And that's probably a hot take.
Definitely is. Not to me though.
Sure. And again, I have nothing bad to say about Prime because I love Prime.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about Fusion, as weird and just off the wall as it is sometimes, and just and how much it moves away from like those sort of the Metroid formula. It's just everything about it just drew me in, and even to this day I love it. So it's one of my favorite Metroid games, even if that's not the majority.
Right. And
I mean, it could be worse. I could say it's Federation Force.
That's true.
Like, and imagine how this episode would have went if I made this about Federation Force.
We could do an episode about Federation Force, so that's what you really want.
I would not want to do that. Absolutely not.
So, anyways, Cam, we've talked about kind of the audience's memories and associations and attachments to this game. Is there a specific, obviously, you talked about the zoom in moment as like kind of a quintessential moment to you. What's a memory that you have? Like, it could be like kind of a sensory relationship. Maybe it's like a place you were, something that you really remember super well, or something that you really associate with this game.
So I remember like very vividly playing this game back in like, I remember the exact moment when I like bought it. My dad took me to Funko Land back in back when that was still a thing here in Philly, when I was like 12 years old. Took me to buy, he bought it for me, and and I went to my room and just like lost myself in that game for hours. I had to get one of the little, this is probably like the most vivid part of it, I had to get one of those little GBA lights, because remember, this is before the backlit screens. So I had one of those little snake lights that like plugged into the GBA, and it zapped your battery to hell, but it like leans over, and I remember playing it in bed, pitch black room, just the only thing that's lit up is the light from this weird little like snake light that's hanging over my screen, and just playing that game all night when I'm supposed to be asleep and probably have like school the next morning or something. And just playing like the whole night, playing Fusion, having to stop every little bit because I kept getting scared. And then just doing that for hours, and like for weeks on end I did that until I finished it. And that's like something that just brings me just like this warm feeling of just like playing that game, and just really takes me down memory lane. And even going back to it when I played it not too long ago, I just sort of like had like these very vivid flashbacks of like, holy shit, I used to play this like under a blanket and like with a little light, and it was like this is cool, like it just,
that's awesome.
That's like that's like very vivid memories that I have of playing that game as a kid.
I mean, that's like quite literally the crux of the show. Is like kind of those vivid memories and the warm feeling of playing or watching or listening to something like that. But honestly, like, is there a better way to play this game than under the covers in the dark? Like,
probably not. Imagine if that game came out now, and then they gave it some sort of like crazy visuals. It's probably even more terrifying. Or maybe they can't even capture that. Like, it's just it's so hard to think about. Like if they did it now, how would it be? And can they capture that, like that weird little bit of like dread that you were able to feel from such a small screen at the time? And looking back on it, it's like, wow, that's like such a testament to like how well, like how implemented all of those features are.
And that's one of the things I've been a lot recently. There have been these rumors of either a Fusion remake or a Super Metroid remake or a port of Fusion or a sequel to Samus Returns on some level that's like in between Super and Samus Returns or something like that. And I keep going back to the fact that I don't know obviously some part of this is nostalgia, but I don't know if anyone, let alone Nintendo, one of the best developers and studios of all time, arguably the best, would be able to recapture the atmosphere and the feeling to the same degree that Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion would be able to. Because I think those games were designed perfectly from the ground up for that experience, for those visuals.
Oh yeah, like I definitely agree. Like obviously like Nintendo's had, a kind of a rocky relationship with, Metroid through the years. But then they sort of knocked that out of the park with Samus Returns. When was that? Maybe like 3 years ago at this point, probably.
Yep.
I want to say.
Almost.
Years?
I think it was almost exactly 3 years because it came out. It came out the September after the Switch came out, which. I don't understand.
Yeah, that was a choice, for sure. But no, like, it's I would like to see them sort of go back to basics and just like really just figure out what they want to do with the franchise, and really make something great and like I said before, take all the best parts of Metroid and just like make something special, make something like that like would make the fans really happy to like see that come back and see Samus's return again. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
it'll be great. Like, I would love to see it. I do believe that Nintendo has it in them. Like they've, I mean, on the Switch recently, they've been just really like, with a lot of their first party stuff, just knocking it out of the park. Like,
absolutely.
Like you got stuff like Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and I'm sure. Fire Emblem is another one.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, like pick a first party game on Switch, and I feel like it's been pretty good for the most part.
Yeah. I can't think of any like really bad ones, and if they bring that same energy to like Metroid, I feel like they could really knock it out of the park. Like they could really do something special. Like give us like even like if it's another 2D Metroid, even if they decide to go in the same sort of visual style as something like Other M, like I feel like they could still make that work.
Yeah,
it was just because there was a good framework in Other M. It just didn't stick the landing. Like there were good things in Other M. The narrative not being one of them, but because like, all we had was Samus screaming about the baby the whole time, and I could probably do without that.
Well, that's that aspect of kind of giving the Metroid series the visuals and vibe and energy and just kind of push that it deserves. Honestly, I think the fact that they gave Prime 4 development back to Retro Studios, I mean, I'm sure that video, everyone listening has seen that video. That infamous delay video where it's like, this game right now as it is not necessarily living up to our standards. We're giving it back to Retro Studios, and that gives me so much hope. And honestly, I'd like to see them make a 2D Metroid game, because you look at Donkey Kong Country.
I was going to say, they did a great job with Donkey Kong. Was it
Tropical Freeze and
Tropical Freeze.
Returns. I think they made both of those, but
they did make Returns.
Okay, because I mean, I'm sure have you played Tropical Freeze?
I have not, but I've heard nothing but good things about it, and it looks great. It's just one of the games I never got around to.
It honestly, to me, has, and again, this is kind of a Donkey Kong Country thing. Like, it's been like this for a little while, but it has that Metroid style storytelling, and there's stuff going on in the background. Every single level flows into the next in a really interesting way, and there's always stuff happening in the background. And obviously, we've seen their prowess with the Prime series, and it makes me wish that, like, honestly, Mercury Steam did such a great job, but I would love to see Retro Studios remake Metroid Fusion specifically.
Yeah, seeing obviously having Retro back on Prime, fantastic. Like if they're gonna just bring that same magic that they brought before, I have no doubt that it'll be something special and what everyone's been waiting for. God, when did 3 come out?
2007.
2007, yeah. So 13 years ago, like, and at this point we don't even know when 4 is coming, but it could be another 5 years at this point. But
right.
But I definitely have full faith in Retro to do something cool with Prime, and if they wanted to do something with Fusion, I would be completely on board. Like, just sort of like, give it the same sort of treatment that was given to Samus Returns, and then Fusion can be like something incredible. Because like with Samus Returns, they took Metroid 2 and expanded it and added to like so many like nuances to it and brought so much to the table. Like the core game is there, but they just like, obviously like probably a lot of it was like technical limitations of the time on the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, and they just took that and just like dialed it up to like 11.
Right.
And yeah, like I would love to see like a studio if Retro would be great, or even another studio wants to take on Fusion and give it that same treatment. I feel like that would definitely be something to get very excited about.
I think another cool studio to do it would be Team Cherry, the team behind oh my god, Hollow Knight.
Oh yes. That would be Hollow Knight's phenomenal. Again, and definitely another one of those games that very heavily influenced by games such as Metroid and Metroidvanias but yeah, Hollow Knight's fantastic. That's another one that has so much personality and so much like world building and so much like lore around, like there's some that's like right in your face, but there's some that's just like sort of just a lot of environmental storytelling, which is what Metroid
the hallmark
has
of
pretty
Metroid.
Much always been. Sort of changed a little bit when they got to Fusion. They added a little bit more narrative, but that environmental storytelling has always been there. There's always been whatever you see like a Chozo statue just like knocked over or something, or like just the bodies of like space pirates or like wherever, like it's always something. There's always something to look at. And like the Metroid world like seems like so lived in that makes it just like so like it makes it feel like tangible, even though it's just so like
so
this
out
outlandish
there.
Sort of like just so like outlandish sci-fi world. It just makes it feel like it has so much personality, which is why it's stood the test of time.
All right, and we do have one more memory that I actually glossed over. Actually, no, we got it after we stopped talking about them. But one more take from the Twitter audience. This one is coming from Leroy Goldman. He says, "Hands down, one of the best GBA games. I don't remember beating it, but I did get very far as a kid. However, goated suit, coolest design. Always use this all color in Smash."
Yeah, definitely. Like, that's definitely a good suit in Smash for sure. It looks great. I've been known to use that one as well. So very good choice on that one, Leroy. But yeah, like I mean, it's definitely one of the best games on GBA for sure. Like I will definitely attest to that. It's a great game that I feel like is sort of gets lost under like the weight of its sort of legacy, because there's obviously there's so many great games on the GBA, but and it sort of got lost, and I think it also got lost, with the release time. They released it like right. I want to say they came out the same exact day as Prime.
Yeah, and also just the fact that it came out so early too. I think it's just
right.
something that people kind of let just fall by the wayside.
Yeah, and it's a shame, and I'm glad that people have been, able to go back and revisit it and see how great it is. And if you missed it, there's never a bad time. It's never too late to go back and revisit an old game like that. And
absolutely,
especially one that's as good as Fusion and holds up as well as Fusion, because I love going back to play old games. Not everything holds up, but for sure, like I play a bunch of old games. I was just playing Jet Force Gemini. Love it, love that game. Would not say it's good, if I'm being honest. I do love it, but it's not great. Especially like by today's standards. Like I would play it and just think, how did I play this when I was like a kid? When I was like 8 years old, I was controlling this fine. Like I can barely keep my head on straight in that game. But yeah, like there's examples like that, but then you have stuff like Fusion that's just really like stood the test of time. Like even if you go back to it now, it's gonna hold up perfectly. Like honestly, I would say just about all of the Metroid games can fall into that category.
Definitely, I would say aside
even
from
though
the first
like
one.
Federation, I was gonna say aside from Federation Force. Even though that came out recently, it feels like it came out 30 years ago.
Oh my god.
But but yeah, like, you know, Fusion and, you know, just about, you know, most of the other ones, you know, really hold up, and I feel like Fusion is one that holds up enough that if you missed it, you definitely owe it to yourself to go back and check it out. If you either are just want to find something that you missed, something new to check out, or if you like Metroid and you just overlooked it, it's definitely worth it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Or even if you just like sci-fi.
If you just like sci-fi, and if you like, you know, some like sci-fi horror and even some body horror, it's like, it's tense, it's suspenseful, it's great. Like, honestly, like, it has like all of those elements. Like, there's so much to like in it. Like,
100%.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and it holds up so well, and still one of my favorite GBA games.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite Metroid games for sure. Definitely on like my all-time faves list. Because I started using that GG app. And it's on my all-time faves for sure.
I gotta update my GG profile. I got on there like a year and a half ago or something like that.
Oh, really?
And then I just stopped. I stopped using it.
Yeah,
right away.
I only got it recently. It seems like blow up recently.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of like the kind of funny people started using it, I believe, and it just like took off. I was like, oh, this looks cool. But yeah, it's a super cool thing to check out.
Definitely. All right, and Cam, now is the part of the show where you get to talk about all the awesome things you do outside of this podcast.
Oh man!
So tell me where people can find your work, find your where you talk about things, all that kind of stuff.
So right now you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Green Eggs and Cam, eggs with a Z. Right now I'm doing like, you know, a bunch of freelancing, sort of running around, just trying to see, you know, different places that I can write for, and, you know, doing like some features and reviews and stuff. I have links to my portfolio if you want to see all of my writing that I did before, reviews and such. I do have a YouTube channel that I'm trying to revitalize, and I did a lot of Let's Plays and just a lot of just silly, sometimes drunken playthroughs of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to like actually revive that. So that's something I'm actually looking forward to doing. Let's get some people involved with it. Mm-hmm. So that should be fun. That link to that is also in my description on Twitter. My channel is just Green Eggs and Cam with the Z again. I'm pretty much Green Eggs and Cam on everything if you want to find me. Also on Instagram, everywhere. Always just doing crazy stuff and having video game hot takes. Yeah, just talking about Metroid and Astro Chain a lot of times. Yeah, man.
And of course,
a lot of fun stuff.
And of course, I'm going to have everything that Cam has just mentioned in the description of the podcast down below. I'll have his Twitter, YouTube, portfolio, as well as his link tree, which all of those things are also linked inside of.
Yes.
So if you want to check him out, definitely go check him out there. Again, he said at Green Eggs and Cam on Twitter. And you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram at CHAS_MKE. The Twitch is under a little bit of a hiatus as I've moved into a very old building that is not wired for the 21st century.
Oh, no.
And so I haven't been able to stream a whole lot recently, but I have been grinding a lot of content over at DualShockers, and then I'm also writing for my college's newspaper, the Columbia Chronicle. And you can find all of that stuff in my bio. I tweet about that stuff all the time. So again, as CHAS_MKE. And then you can find my YouTube channel. That's just Chaz. I know a lot of you guys are probably actually listening to this podcast through that instead of through Spotify or Anchor or any of that. But if you do have a chance, please do go check out our Anchor page, because it does actually have just so many ways for you to kind of just help support the podcast. And get the podcast more recognition on the service. So I'd really appreciate if you checked it out. I'll have the Anchor FM link actually in the description of the podcast as well. You can follow the official Comfort Food Twitter account, which is literally just me, but with a different profile picture. And that's at Comfort_Food_Pod on Twitter. And thank you all very much for listening. Again, links to all the different things that we have talked about in this last 5 minutes of the episode in the description down below. So please go ahead, check all of those things out. Anyways, thanks for listening. Peace out.